So stay with us today on the American Woodshop.
The American Woodshop with Scott Phillips is brought to you by
Woodcraft, since 1928, providing traditional and modern woodworking tools and supplies to generations of craftsmen. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Pro Tools, for tool pros. Rikon Tools.
Woodcraft Magazine. Projects, plans, and web links designed to help you make wood work. P.S. Wood, home of Timberwolf Swedish silicon steel bandsaw blades and super sharp scroll saw blades. A bed to sleep on. A table to share meals. A house that feels like a home. The Furniture Bank of Central Ohio, providing furniture to neighbors in need.
This is one of the most elegant projects of all time. It's graceful, it's light, and here are the key dimensions. The top from a point to curve is 13 inches. And we're going to cut that out on the bandsaw. It has to be 1 5/8 inch thick first time, and then we're going to sculpt it down with a belt sander and sand it lightly. The legs all get turned, and they're identical. Inch coming through here, wide spot here with the shoulder is 1 1/8 inches, and it goes all the way down to 15/16 at the foot. And these are 26 inches long. And then these identical bulbous stretchers, we're going to make out of red oak. These are cherry, but we want a slightly different effect. And these are 1/2 inch tenons coming all the way through a 1/2 inch mortise. And that's a hand drilling technique that makes that simple. So to make this project, let's start with the seat first at the bandsaw. White marking pencil is the best way to trace out profiles. And on walnut, without any end checks in it, air dried, just a hair over 1 5/8 inches thick, we're going to make that cut using a 3/4 inch bandsaw blade. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety instructions that come with the tools and products you use. Work safely. These are safety glasses, hearing protections on. So I'll turn on the dust collector, turn on the bandsaw, sculpt this out. Leave the line. That's a very important thing. Now, use that brake on the bandsaw, stop that. And here you can see a very graceful silhouette for the seat. That gets sculpted down, but we have to drill the holes, and we'll do that after we get all the legs prepped. Okay, and you can see the holes go into the flat part, never on the corner. That's for stability and also for graceful look. So now what I'm going to do is set this up on the bandsaw and not putting my hands in the plane of the blade. What I'm doing is giving that blade a chance to make that cut. And then when I'm a little more than halfway through, again, my hands are completely free of the plane of the blade. I'm holding it in position, and this is where you can use a good push stick to finish the cut, control the workpiece, and do it safely. So now, that's one square, and I'm going to cut out 2 more. This is now called a billet. This hard maple square is 1¼ inch each dimension, and on the end I just drilled a pilot hole right in the middle, each end, and then malleted the drive spur in so those spurs grab the workpiece, and I bring that up and on this end, and then I advance the live ball bearing point into the other pilot hole, adjust it until it's nice and tight, and then I lock the tail, that's the ram that I locked. I checked the lock on the tailstock. I lock the banjo and holds the tool rest. The tool rest is locked, so the cutting edge of the roughing gouge, and that's 1.25 inches from point to point on the flute, and that's what I like to use when I turn to knock the corners off. You pinch the chisel, lay your hand on the tool rest, and that avoids the chisel from jamming into the void. And I have this set up to run right around 800 RPM. Now it comes up to speed, face shield down, no rings on, sleeves rolled up, no jewelry. Now watch what I do. Handle, that long handle to my body, that's stability. This hand right here has one job to do, and that's hold that chisel securely to the tool rest. Then I ease it in until it makes contact, and then I just glide my body right down the tool rest, and that takes off light controlled cuts. It's always a matter of finesse. If you're getting white knuckled and it seems dangerous to you, you're being too aggressive, take about no more than a 1/16 off at a time. Have a little bit of a vibration going on here, and I'll dial that speed up ever so slightly. Cutting edge is right at or slightly above center line of the workpiece. You don't want to go straight in. That would be a scrape cut. By dropping the handle like this and then raising it until the cutting edge engages, you're going to get more of a shear cut. So we're almost round. Square stock to round. Not quite there yet. Remember, on one end I need 1 1/8 inches, tapered down. So what I'm going to do, once this is round, let's check that out, turn that off, let it come to stop. Never reach in there to stop this. Your fingers could roll around and get pinched. Now that looks pretty good, so I'll just slide the banjo down, lock it in place, keeping that tool rest well away from that workpiece. I checked that, and now I'll finish tapering this. I'll taper it all from 15/16 at this end to 1.8 inches at that end. So I'll get that done. Let it come up to speed. And as long as you keep all the locks locked, everything's good, and you keep this spindle locked between centers. And don't get greedy. Take your time to knock those high spots off. And yes, you could use a bandsaw, tilt the table to 45 degrees and knock them off, but there's nothing wrong with using your roughing gouge to turn work pieces that are square around. Now, the high spots are worked down. I'll take the square off of the far end, and this is where the tenon will be. And the tenon needs to be 2 inches long. That's 1 inch in diameter. Okay, let's get that done. I know the diameter of the drive spur is 1 inch, so I do not want to hit that drive spur or anything metal. So I can get it close, but I'm leaving it a little bit proud right now. And here's what I'm going to do to size it. Here's the technique to get a perfect fit of this tenon, 1 inch diameter, coming through the top of the stool. And so what I'm going to use is a 1 inch wrench, and I'm going to fit it on there so it's a tight fit, and I'm going to use a square carbide cutter. And these are wonderful tools locked into the handle. This will take different cutters, but I have to raise the tool rest so the cutting edge of this carbide, like a steel cliff, is just slightly above center line, and lock it in place. That's perfect right there. And I don't want to put it into a bind. I'll turn it on, let it come up to speed. And then using the drive spur right here as my visual go-by and marrying that chisel to my body, I'm just going to size this down to that 1-inch diameter. And I think I'm really close right there. Using my eye to sight down it. And I've left it just a little proud. Now we can turn that off and see if that wrench will fit on there. Needs to go down a hair more, but that's the best way to size it. Once I get that diameter perfect, I use this square cutter then to smooth this entire tenon off so that it's exactly 2 inches long. That gives me enough to stub it through the seat and then trim it flush with a razor saw. This is like a hot knife through butter. And I'm being careful to stay away from those drive spur points. I think I'm there. And I'll show you the very simple way to make this very accurate. So now I can bring up the dial calipers. And it says 1 inch and 1/64. And then I can measure it this way. And that's 1.5 inches right there, 2 inches right there, which is what I want. And I can bring up this cutter again, get that dimension right, and then I will slide the tool rest down and lock it in position, and I will taper the rest of the leg. This is how you get perfect tenons every time. Remember, you can always take it off. You can't put it back on, so be sure to leave it a little proud. That way you can sand it to the finished dimension. I don't want to touch that live ball bearing center right there. I think I've got it. Let's turn that off and check it for dimension. This is good. Dial calipers. What I'm looking for right here is that right there. That's 15/16. In the middle, that needs to come down just a hair more. And then on this end, just a 32nd on that end. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to bring a dust collector port here, and I'm going to sand on the downside of this rotating workpiece. You never sand with the tool rest on the lathe. And I will sand that smooth, and once it's sanded, I'll clean it off, and then I'll friction on arm or seal. And I'll do that for 3 identical legs, and then we'll turn the stretchers. It's very easy to do. And that is how the 3 legs are made for the stool. And I'll tell you, buying a wrench like this, $11 is the best caliper, because what you can do is actually compress the wood fibers of that tenon down with that wrench to get it perfectly sized so you get a super tight fit. Now, we need 3 spindles, and the spindles are all the same. They ended up being 17.5 long to give me trim material, tapered down to a 1/2 inch diameter tenon down here. And you'll see why that's important when we drill and put this whole assembly together. Now, to create that bulbous form for the stretcher, the easiest thing to use is a 4-jawed chuck with a 13mm mini spigot. Say that 3 times fast. And that's locked in. And this dowel rod, that's a 1-inch dowel rod that we're going to turn down, and that's captured by those jawls, and the live ball bearing point locks it in. Now watch how easy it is to turn this down into form. We'll bring this up to about 1,000 RPM. It's captive right now, locked in place. And I'm using the rough and gouge now so that the cutting edge is slightly above center line. And from the middle of that spindle to the end, I'm taking that end diameter down. And what I'm going to do is use that 1/2 inch diameter wrench to get the sizing just right. And when I think I'm close, and I'm pretty sure I'm right there, it's amazing how you can use your eyeball very precisely. Let's see if that fits. Needs to come down a hair more. And then once I get this tapered down, very nicely, let it come up to speed, so that that is a perfect fit. I'll sand it and finish exactly the same way. But before I can do that, I'm going to reverse chuck it. Let that come down to speed. And that is perfect right there. And when I say reverse chuck it, what I do is I flip this end into this jaw, tighten that down, and then I taper this end, which is at the live ball bearing center end now, down exactly the same way. A little bit of sanding, a little bit of finishing, and then it's on to getting the rest of the chair or seat ready. On the bottom of the seat now, that we cut out at the bandsaw, I'm drilling angled holes. That's drilled at a 15-degree angle, and I'm using this jig that is tilted at a 15-degree angle with this stop on it so that we can do this. What that does is that gives me the angle out on the 3 legs, and I haven't seated those home yet because that's a super tight fit. And that hole is going to be 1.25 inches deep at the deepest spot, which would be on the downside of the angle. So with this curved fence right here, what I can do is rotate that around, line up this point right there, bring that point over to the edge of the fence and clamp it, and that will give me the precise angles that I need. And by the way, the center points of those 3 points, it's at the end of an equilateral triangle right here. That's 6 7/8 from point to point. And now I can finish drilling that. Be sure to clamp it and drill all 3 holes. From here, it's outside. Once the holes are drilled in the workpiece, it's time to sculpt it. So holes down, and this is called a hold fast. We don't need that because we have this. Does the same thing. Auto adjusts to hold workpieces. We have a fence that this toggles against. And instead of the belt sander that I mentioned earlier, we're going to use a power planer. The key to using this is light cuts. Keep it moving and sculpt this workpiece down. I have the chips ejected out that direction. This is nice. And we'll profile the seat, create a nice curved top, and then a little bit of relief on the bottom edge. Watch that cord. That's good. Hold the sole to the workpiece. Now, sculpt away. Now, you want to use a light touch on this tool, and I have it set to take off 3/64 of an inch at a time. And on the bottom, with the holes up now, secure that, and I just need to relieve that ever so slightly to make this edge thinner. Once I get that done, a bit of sanding, and then we can assemble the parts. What makes this stool just so graceful is this thin edge and the sculpted top, and I've opted not to have the holes come all the way through because I want that beautiful grain. Look at that crotch figure right there to really speak to me. Now this is how you make a locking leg. You use a razor saw and you cut it right along the middle, about 1/2 inch down, just like that. Doesn't go all the way through, doesn't have to. And then take a 5/16 inch drill bit, and that's a brad point. And I want that to not go quite all the way through. You'll see why in a second. Just like that. And now that that hole's done, I can finish this slot. cutting ever so carefully on the pull stroke. And what am I doing here? Well, release that, get that cleaned out. I'm using expanding polyurethane glue. This is not ordinary wood glue. And what I do is I fill that 3/4 of the way full. This one's already done. Same thing here. And what does that glue do? It forces up through that crack and it creates a locking wedge. So that's the easiest way to give me a new look and not have to wedge it like the other one was wedged. And you do not want glue in the joint of these mortises, because if you put that in there, it could squeeze as it expands the legs out. And aesthetically, I like everything about this look. I'll get the other leg in and then I'll show you how to do stretchers. With all 3 legs into the bottom of the seat and seated all the way home, I'm going to put the stretchers in. And I learned this technique from Michael Dunbar. I'm using a 1/2-inch spade bit that matches the 1/2-inch tenons and blue painter's tape. I use dividers to give me the position of where the holes need to go. And now I'm sighting down this shaft to my next mark on the other leg. And what this does, it gives me the ability to drill compound holes without fancy jigs and fixtures. This technique works. I'll get all the holes done, and then because open time on this Gorilla type glue is so long, I'll be able to ease the legs out, put the stretchers in, and then seat everything back together. The stretchers do not need glued. And the blue painter's tape prevents tear out. Ease it through and sight that bit. Now, once all the stretchers are in, you put the legs back home and you walk everything together, being ever so careful to rotate it around, tap things in place, draw the legs tight. The stretchers are oversized to accommodate any issues that you might have. That needs to come through just like that. That's good. That looks really nice. Everything's coming together well. So I'll tap this in place, and then once it's all tapped in, seat the legs home, and then what I'll do is a bit of sanding onto finishing with the armor seal, and we'll get the final reveal. Time for the penetrating oil finish. And it's stirred, and that walnut just comes alive. Man, oh man. And the maple, it looks great on the maple legs. I'll get this brushed out, and then we'll take a final look at this project. I like to put 3 coats of this on. It takes about an hour's drying time at 70 degrees and 50% humidity. Of course, I'll brush out the legs, like this area right here. I had to sand it down, and I like the contrasting wood color right there. So I'll get this finished and we'll take a look at the completed project. Now here's how it all comes together. I really like the graceful look of it. I like everything about this stool, and the main thing is it's so comfortable. So I hope this inspires you to try turning, making your own stool. You can go traditional or contemporary. It's entirely up to you. And that's the beauty of home shops. You can do it your way. Take up wood turning. It's easy to do, it's fun. Get some hands-on from good friends or join a woodworking club and have fun. Now next week it's on to a beautiful jewelry box. Hope you join us then. See ya.
Woodcraft since 1928. Providing traditional and modern woodworking tools and supplies to generations of craftsmen. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Pro Tools. for tool pros. Rikon Tools.
Woodcraft Magazine. Projects, plans, and web links designed to help you make wood work. P.S. Wood, home of Timberwolf Swedish silicon steel bandsaw blades and super sharp scroll saw blades. A bed to sleep on. A table to share meals. A house that feels like a home. The Furniture Bank of Central Ohio, providing furniture to neighbors in need.
For more information on tips behind the American Woodshop and watch free episodes 24/7, check us out online and like us on Facebook.